Oh my God, we're live. Holy crap. How many time zones are we in? This is crazy. All right. I'm Ray Wang. I'm with my awesome co-host, co-founder, Vala Afshar, and our amazing producer, Elle. We're going to introduce our guests really quickly. They're going to tell us where they're from and what they're going to be talking about. And we're going to go in reverse order. So I'm going to start with you, Geeta. Where are we from?
All right. Thanks. First of all, Ray, Vala, Elle, thanks so much for the opportunity to be on. Happy Friday, everybody. I am coming to you live from Miami, Florida, where we give the sunshine and COVID-19 away for free. Come and visit next year, maybe. I am a rheumatologist by background. I'm the executive medical director at Salesforce and looking forward to talking all things digital and healthcare today. So thank you.
Woohoo. All right. Mark, where are you calling in from?
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks for having me. I am calling in from Nairobi, and I'm super excited to be here. Vala, it's good to be with you. There's so much that I want to thank you for, and Ray and Elle. We've all kind of talked before, but yeah. So I'm founder of Impact Africa Network. Essentially, what we are is the technical term is a startup studio, but really what we are is a movement. And a movement on a mission to ensure that young, talented Africans can participate in the digital transformation of Africa as creators and owners. And so that's what we do, and hopefully we'll dive into how that works here in a little bit.
Awesome. Excellent. And thanks for spending your evening with us. I know it's late there, but it's even later with Deepali. Where are we? So where are you calling in from?
Hi, I'm calling in from India, Mumbai. And thank you, Vala and Ray, for having me here. And lovely to meet you, Dr. G and Mark. I am the Chief Marketing Officer for IBM in India and South Asia. And today we're going to talk about what does marketing mean in B2B versus B2C kind of climates, because I have transitioned from being a B2C marketer into a B2B marketer now.
Oh, wow. All right, this is going to be cool. All right, we're going to go live soon. Let's do the countdown. Elle, all yours.
3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us on DisrupTV. My name is Vala Afshar. I'm the Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to follow us on Twitter at DisrupTV Show. Send Ray, myself, and our distinguished guests your questions live using hashtag DisrupTV, and we'll do our best to answer them during the show. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host. He's the CEO and founder of Constellation Research, best-selling author of Disrupting Digital Business, one of my favorite books. He's regularly on Fox Business, Yahoo Finance, CNN, Bloomberg. He's everywhere. And in my humble opinion, he's one of the top futurists to follow on Twitter at RWANG0. Welcome, Ray Wang, to DisrupTV.
Very, very kind. I'm here with my awesome co-host, Vala Afshar. Not only is the chief digital evangelist at Salesforce, the more important thing is he's an author, he's a speaker, he's the #1 person followed by CIOs, CMOs, and CEOs in social media, and also most inspirational. I think there's a new vote and poll out, but he doesn't know about that yet. So coming out about what he does. So thanks for being on the show, and thanks for co-hosting with me for so long. But more importantly, you've got to check out the blog on ZDNet. So he's been writing a lot there. All the articles show up here. You get the insightful action. You get the videos, of course, and it all shows up there. But this is not about us. This is about our cool guests. And we have someone calling in like it's late at night. So who do we have? Who's our first guest?
You want to talk about cool? We're talking one of the coolest executives in the world in terms of marketing. Deepali Naair is CMO of IBM in India and South Asia. Deepali was awarded the 2020 CMO of the Year award by Economic Times for most promising tech marketeers. Deepali was also named the 50 most influential Indian woman by Impact 3 years, 2018, 19, and 20. She's also a 2020 CMO Transformation Award recipient by Pitch CMO and the top 30 CMOs listed by India IAM AI. Deepali teaches business school and mentors women-led startups and accelerators. Amazing work. She serves on several boards. Please follow her on Twitter at DeepaliNaair and check out her amazing new podcast on leadership, what it takes to be a good human being and a good leader and a good manager. Amazing podcast. Welcome, Deepali, to DisrupTV.
Thank you, Vala. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And Ray, great to be here.
Hey,
Thank you
no,
so
thank
much.
you for being here. And it's an honor to meet you. You're one of the top marketers in India, and you've done everything from insurance to like luxury resorts to selling cooking oil to mobile phones. I mean, this is crazy. And now you're in enterprise tech, right? And when you think about technology, it's we're going from B to C to B to B. What's the difference? And what are some of the things that people can learn? Like they can bring from the B to C side to B to B, and of course, and the other way around that you've learned along the way as you're doing B2B?
It's interesting that you ask. I think, if you remain in the domain of, applying frameworks and don't apply the direct learnings from one domain to the other, you can learn a lot. For example, I think what B2C marketers are great at is, looking at the consumer cohorts, doing consumer insighting, developing communication, packaging, pricing to serve the needs of those cohorts. They're great at that, and that's what I think we ought to learn from them. And I think B2B marketers are great at doing data-driven marketing, running digital marketing, running performance marketing. The concepts of e-commerce is something that you learn from B2B marketers. And I think the most wonderful thing that's happening in this space is that B2B marketers are really looking at small segments and running them in a programmatic fashion now, which has happened only in the last 4 or 5 years when digital marketing has really, really taken off.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That personalization at scale, and so many lessons on the B2C side that's being adopted from business to business. And at the end of the day, people build relationships with people. So it's important to humanize the business, and that's what you're doing. My observation of your work is you're a great storyteller, great interviewer. I mean, you really get really soulful, insightful content from folks that appear on your podcast. You're active on social. So you're accessible, to be able to communicate with a CMO of a revered brand like IBM. I see you responding and connecting with everybody, regardless of their title or company. So you're very generous with your time. You're a great storyteller. Are these the qualities that are required now for a modern CMO, for a Fortune 100 company? Do you need to be social? Do you need to be accessible? Do you need to be a storyteller? What are some of the recipes of success you can share with our audience?
Thank you very much, Vala, for saying that. But I see all these qualities in you too. You are a great storyteller and accessible and, so active on social. But I think apart from this, there are 2, 3 other things that one must keep in mind. One, I think you've got to believe this today that you will be obsolete in 3 years' time. So your current role and your current skills will be obsolete. So I think you have to constantly learn. So therefore, you need to be an infinite learner. I think that's one quality that you need to bring to the table in any profession that you're in, but especially in marketing. I think the second quality is that you need to have learning agility. You need to learn quickly, and you need to learn frameworks from one place and apply them to another, one industry to another, from home to work, work to home. I think that's what one needs to do. And the last thing, and very important, you need to have client centricity as your value system, your personal value system. I think that's when you're able to be human, to the people, whether I'm interviewing them on a podcast or, whether I am talking to them on social, or whether I'm generous with my time. All the qualities that you explained is because I think we are human centric and we are client centric.
I love the term infinite learner. That's awesome. I'm going to use that. That's a great, that's a great mindset.
I won't take credit for it. It came out of a podcast that Reid Hoffman runs, the Infinite Learning podcast.
Oh, right. Yeah, his masterclass podcast. Oh, very cool.
Yes.
Everything, Deepali, everything is borrowed. Everything is, yeah, that's awesome.
It's all about how you retell the story. I think
that's right.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. In the right context, right cultural context, and the right conversational tone. I mean, it changes everything. So,
yeah,
but hey, you're go ahead.
It's not just about retelling the story. It's also, I think, in our work and professions, it's about reapplying the concepts and frameworks. Sorry, Ray, you were saying something and I interrupted you.
Well said.
Oh, no, I agree with you. And it's not just, it's getting the frameworks right and the context, helping people understand, the reason for that story, the purpose behind it. I mean, it all comes into play. So, yeah. So, hey, I was asking you, really thinking about, you're bringing all these different types of people from different teams and different domains. How does that work, and how do you bring them into a cultural environment and share that type of culture you're talking about?
I think people want to be led, is what I believe. People want to be given goals, is what I believe. And people, want to be appreciated. If you keep these three things in mind, I think everything kind of works in terms of, changing cultures. And I have, two stories to tell you here, two anecdotes to share. When I used to work for an insurance company, I used to run the sales and business there, and I used to be responsible for the P&L. I learned that what is valuable for business is really cost per sale, not any of the middle matrix. Ultimately, what will matter to the board and the CEO is cost per sale, right? And when I arrived at the holiday, for example, the marketing matrix that the team used to work with was, cost per lead. And one changed that to bring that cost per sale metric here also. So that's where I used a concept and a framework from an insurance company to a holiday company. Did not copy paste, but use that framework. And I did that not just for the marketing team, I did that for the marketing agencies and partners and vendors also, right? And that meant an overhaul of not just the marketing systems, but also the sales systems, because there was influence that marketing team used for the sales team to also do better. So that's when you create a culture of efficacy, culture of a goal setting, culture of what gets measured gets done, as I believe. That's one thing,
And
that's important. And the second
you're
thing,
basically looking at the whole ecosystem and the whole value chain behind marketing. And Liz Miller's saying the same thing. It's this infinite loop of evolution. So
yeah, well put. Thank you. And the second thing, in terms of building cultures, I think you need to look at the employees that you have in your team members, also as a customer cohort. Now, if you were to look at them, and when I arrived at IBM, I found that everybody wanted to be appreciated. That was my consumer insight for my team. And they want to be, of course, when they come to work, we all assume that they want to be appreciated for work. But if you really look at the human insight behind it, we all want to be appreciated as people, as a person. And to me, I took it one step further and I said, why not celebrate everyone? And we, then took the insight further to say that the one day in a year when unanimously everybody around you celebrates you is your birthday. And, we did a unique birthday program, which is totally personalized. We develop caricatures. We get the team to find out what you like, what your hobbies are. And, we celebrate you on social media, on email. We make the day really special. And, we appreciate you that day by making you, feel special on things that you're
so
good
nice.
at. This is very well regarded within IBM, and that sets the tone, for the whole team to realize that everybody needs to be appreciated. And I think that's the other insight, which is culture changing, in a team. If there is time, I want to tell one more,
Please.
anecdote here.
Please, yeah.
Yeah, another interesting thing that I learned from one of the IBM leaders is a concept called positive gossip. And I know that everybody thinks gossip is negative, but it's positive gossip, And that's really actually what we all know of, which is storytelling, right? So tell the story about a person's greatness when that person is not around, and that's positive.
I love that.
And that builds a culture in the team about positive feedback, about appreciation, and people, it creates a lot of warmth, inside it. But do this appreciation for the right things. It's not flattery. It is for genuine things that those people have done, and do it in a story format. Gossip is always in a story format, and therefore positive gossip. I think that works for the teams.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I hope there's positive gossip about Ray and I after the show. That would be great. But that's awesome. Well, so the team in India under your leadership has won 2 global awards for successive quarters within IBM. And these are difficult times, certainly since February of this year in the US, and I suspect that's the same time frame in India. We're all under new experiences. We're all under stress. Some, unfortunately in the US, some we're nearing 200,000 lives lost due to the pandemic. How do you personally keep that morale of optimism, hope, knowing that we're going to hopefully get out of this pandemic even stronger, even better, even more positioned for success? Can you share how you inspire your team? Because it's working. Your team specifically is continuously getting recognized for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for saying us. I think IBM is a great place, and Michelle Peluso, our global CMO, and her leadership team, they recognize, the work that they're doing. But I think two things. One is every little tip and trick that you are reading on social media these days, do it. I think if they tell you that check in with the team every day, do it. If they say do virtual coffee, please do it. If they say, have children coming into your calls, please do it. I think the more interaction that we have with our teams, the more they feel that, they are here and we are supporting them and they're supporting us. I think both is very important. I think second, Vala and Ray, what, we've done is that as leaders, we don't mind sharing our vulnerabilities. It's extremely important for the teams to recognize that I can have a bad day too, or that I can feel disappointed on some days, or that I could be needing a pep up and a zest of energy. And, seeing the fact that I'm human and I'm not all powerful also makes them realize that their problems, their families are also important, and I have the same kind of issues. So that's on, the pandemic time and the COVID time. But I think culture cannot be built overnight. I think some of the other things that we did earlier have also ensured that we are a successful team. And those are that, risk-taking ability in my team is appreciated. New ideas are appreciated. Small failures, are all right. Nobody gets penalized for failures, small failures, as long as you're measuring and learning, from what you're doing. And those are great cultures to have. And in IBM, the other thing that we do is we plan for the future. We plan for technology to come. So for example, when COVID struck, we were already ready for doing 100% virtual events, because we were saying, okay, 3 to 4 years later, these things are going to come. Let's start experimenting with these things, right? We just accelerated our learning, when COVID came. So, in short, all the things that I spoke about, which is building a culture of failure, risk-taking, etc., very, very entrepreneur mindset, and we encourage that, in IBM. I especially encourage that. And of course, coupled with that, I have to take a little bit of national pride here in India. We are a very resourceful set of people in India. There's something called the Jugaad innovation.
Jugaad,
right?
Yes.
And I think Indian teams, marketing teams will specialize in that. Not just my team. I think all of Indian marketing teams will do that. So I think a little bit of that magic dust also helps.
Awesome.
My good friend Navi Raju wrote a book on that. Innovation.
Yes.
So,
I have it.
You have the book? Oh, yeah.
I have the book. Yeah, Jugaad Innovation right there. Yeah.
Jugaad Innovation, one of the fun ones. So, so hey, when we look at the future of marketing, we only got a few minutes here left, but when we look at the future of marketing, how do we build these new relationships when everything's a virtual call? Can we change that? Have you thought through this? Like, does the enterprise sales motion change?
I think the enterprise sales motion does change, in terms of the rituals that it has. It may not change at the center of understanding that we've got to appreciate clients' problems. We've got to, be there and be in their corner. We've got to solve their future problems. We've got to make them think, about how the world of future is going to look like, because, we are the pioneers. We are the ones who know how technology works. But, we've got to think about the business. So at the heart of it, that doesn't change. But the motions of how you approach the client, how programmatically you run relationship after that virtual call is over, how do you stay in touch on social media or through the one-on-one channels that you have, which could be email or WhatsApp or, various other methodologies. I think that changes. But I think, the beauty in all this is, Ray, that I think all of us are learning and we're trying to see what a salesperson could deliver earlier. Can we deliver this programmatically? Can we help the salesperson do this in a programmatic fashion? I think that's the bit, that is changing. And, the second thing is, nobody owns an idea. I think we can learn from everybody. That is extremely important. So learn. Copy what you can from somewhere else, and it needn't be from, tech companies. So, for example, the brief that sometimes I give to my team is get inspired from the world of gaming. Look how they engage, the young millennials and Gen Zs who are known to be, having attention span of a goldfish. I said, so let's just learn from them. I think that's the bit that marketers need to do.
This is awesome. This is my last question. And by the way, Ray, when do we have guests that show up midnight and have the energy and passion of Deepali? Imagine if this was like AM with Deepali.
Imagine us at midnight.
You're amazing. You're amazing. You're right. I'm about 10% of today at midnight. So my last question, given the fact that we went from a centralized to a decentralized only, digital only construct for the last several months, and we may be in this next normal for many months, certainly potentially years to come. The importance of technology. How important is it for CMOs to have their best friend be the CIO, and really building a relationship where you're putting the science into the art and the art into the science of marketing by leveraging, the technologists in your company to really determine the art of the possible, especially in this next normal?
I totally agree with you, Vala, but I also say this. I think the marketers need to also learn and understand technology better. So they need to be, techno marketing, tech marketers, or whatever it is that, terms that we want to use. But I think they need to learn technology. Second is, it's not just the CIO. Of course, the CIO's team and the CTO's team needs to be your best friends. But I think there is a lot of the tech ecosystem that helps you. And I have found actually that some of the ecosystem that you have for marketing teams, which is the vendors, the partners, they've also really pivoted very quickly.
Yes.
We cannot deliver without them. And,
Yes.
And Ray, we were talking, backstage about some of the work that you're doing, right? If the ecosystem had not pivoted very quickly with us, we may not have been able to service or reach out to our clients that quickly. So I have to give appreciation to them also.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said.
Well said. This is awesome. Thank you so much for this insight. We are here at Deepali Naair, CMO of IBM India and South Asia. You can follow her at DeepaliNaair. So get all the double A's. So thanks a lot for being on the show.
You guys are awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deepali. You're amazing enthusiasm, amazing storyteller. And, we try to get guests to join us very late in their evening. And so that's no exception with our next guest. Our first guest from India, our second guest from Africa. We have Mark Karake, founder and CEO of Impact Africa Network, a nonprofit startup studio in Nairobi, with a mission to ensure young, talented Africans have a chance to participate in a digital transformation of Africa as creators and owners, not just consumers of digital and technology, creators and owners. After 15 years in Silicon Valley, Mark chose to repatriate back to Africa to immerse himself in the economic development challenge. Impact Africa has a 10-10-10 goal. By 2030, Mark will talk about 10 companies that create 100,000 new jobs and have a combined value of $10 billion. So Mark and his Impact Africa Network have very bold, very impactful goals and mission. June of this year, Mark sat down and wrote an article titled Last Black Man Standing in San Francisco, and the article went viral. CEO of LinkedIn, Jeff Weiner, Aaron Levy, CEO of Box, and many other CEOs of incredibly successful companies all talked about this incredible article that Mark wrote, and we can talk about that. Jeff, CEO of LinkedIn, said, at a time when I'm trying to listen and learn and how to become more effective ally, enormously grateful for the incredible writers like Mark for sharing their stories, so vulnerability and honesty, and helping cultivate greater empathy and compassion. He's created a movement. Impact Africa Network is not a startup, it's a movement. And you got to follow him to learn about this movement on Twitter at KARAKE MARK, Karake Mark. Welcome, Mark, to DisrupTV.
Thanks for having me, guys. Super excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
We are so happy to have you. That was an amazing article. It definitely hit and touched on every aspect of, being in Silicon Valley and being in Silicon Valley in different types of scenarios and conditions. But you've been everywhere. I mean, you were at Oracle, you were at Google, you were at Threat Matrix, right? What was the experience like when you got to the Valley? And then, of course, when you left to go do this in Nairobi?
Yeah, it was, how can I put it? It was just a learning vortex. And yeah, I guess I like to summarize my experience in the Valley as if I was to boil it down to what I learned in the Valley is just the world is a malleable place and you can actually change the world. And that's what Silicon Valley really represents to the rest of the world and to itself, I'm sure. The other thing that I took away from Silicon Valley was the power and speed of digital innovation. I mean, it's like nothing else we've probably seen in human history in terms of the pace at which you can shift and mold the reality that you live in. And the other thing I like to that is this concept of we're living in the techpreneur age. Technology entrepreneurs are the emperors of our time. And that's just the reality. And if you don't mind, I can kind of give you a couple of stories why I believe that is so true.
No,
I mean,
please, definitely.
It's kind of the reality we live in. So I'll talk about the two Marks. And the first one is actually your boss, Vala, Mark Benioff. The first time I heard about Salesforce was sometime in 2004. I was young in my career, and I heard about this company called Salesforce. And every talking head and expert was saying, yeah, this cloud thing is not going to go anywhere. Who's going to put their data into the cloud, and so on and so forth. So I was listening to people who knew more than I did. But I watched this company over the years go from milestone to milestone to milestone. And in 14 years, by the time I was leaving the Bay Area, Salesforce came to be emblematic of what I'm talking about, the power and speed of digital innovation to transform the landscape in record time. In my lifetime, in my short lifetime in the Bay Area, they were building the tallest skyscraper in one of the most expensive real estate markets in the world, going from doubt to dominance in front of my eyes. And so Mark Benioff is, and then you put on top of that, what Mark Benioff has become in that time is a cultural icon. He's an influencer in the technology space. He has become somebody who can move the needle in so many different ways in front of my eyes, in my own limited lifetime. And the other Mark is obviously the Facebook guy, right? He entered the Bay Area.
One is a C, one's a K. You'll figure it out.
One's okay, but he found me there, and I remember watching that company. I remember stalking Facebook when they had their offices on a university at Stanford campus, right, somewhere over there. Because I knew you once you have been in the Bay Area, you've seen a couple of rocket ships taking off. You're trying to get on one of those things so you can actually take that ride. And I remember seeing this thing just go from strength to strength to strength. And in the same time frame, or even lesser time, this person goes to influence Western democracy, global democracy. And he is kind of the most influential person right now, one of the most influential persons on the planet. And so what did I take away from Silicon Valley? The world is completely a malleable place. And digital transformation is like nothing. If you've not been in the Bay Area, you really don't get it, right? And so for me, we're living in the techpreneur age. They're the emperors of our time. And that is what I'm looking to do here, to ensure that our young Africans do not miss out on the biggest transformational opportunity of our time, to shift the narrative and write a new future.
No, absolutely. And according to Bill Gates, Africa's potential is going to massively shock the world in terms of talent, hunger, the desire to do. But you have to have someone like yourself who witnessed rocket ships. You were on a rocket ship yourself. To really, they say a river without boundaries is a puddle. You have to be the boundary guiding these entrepreneurs to think bigger, to think that there is limitless potential. Like Deepali said, infinite learning, there's infinite growth opportunity as long as you have infinite growth mindset. So I want to ask, as someone who was on a rocket ship, as someone who's at the heart of it, just putting a dent in the universe, as late Steve Jobs would say, why did you leave? What was that day, moment, experience, conversation? What was it that you said, you know what? I'm going to leave the epicenter of innovation and I'm going to create a movement in a continent that is lagging in terms of potential accomplishments?
Wow. Okay. A number of different things. One is kind of this concept of my TED Talk. I think all of us look for purpose in life. We look for that unique thumbprint that you want to put into the world that speaks to your soul and who you are. And for me, I found over time, as I was studying myself and trying to figure out what motivates me, it was really about unleashing human potential, and with a focus more on youth development and driving systemic change through innovation and entrepreneurship. Because to me, it's always about how can we unlock human potential to achieve. I love to see people thrive and pursue their potential. So it was that was kind of like my nexus. I love working with young people. I loved innovation and entrepreneurship and shifting reality to enable the betterment of the human experience. And the other thing too, that deep inside me, I always wanted to change the African narrative, because the story about Africa, you guys know what it is, but I grew up here. And I knew that genius, for me, I lived it. Genius is evenly distributed, but opportunity is not. And so I always knew that Africa's time one day will come, hopefully in my lifetime. And for me, this whole notion of digital innovation and so on and so forth and entrepreneurship, I had, once I understood the power, I was like, this could be the thing that could change things for us. And so what made me make the move? I understood who I was. I was kind of growing into that. I wanted to do something in that nexus, if you will. The other one is just really personal dissatisfaction. And you talked about the article that I wrote. Being Black in the Bay Area, man, it was tough. I mean, career limitations. I mean, at many companies that I was the only Black person there. I didn't see people ahead of me who looked like me, who I would feel comfortable approaching, or who would feel comfortable taking the risk on me. You know, we have this transaction, whether we like it or not. You know, people look and say, okay, is this a risk I can take, you know, enabling this person or whatever. So the career limit, I'd hit the zenith of what I could do as an individual contributor. And the next level was leadership. There was nobody who could take a risk on somebody like me, because I just didn't look the part. And so I could feel that I was hemmed in from a career perspective. The other one was social ostracization, right? Basically, I was a lone man on an island, right? And it was just hard. I mean, you don't have people who it smiles and work and so on and so forth, and coworkers are great, but that only goes so far. You know, you need people who can have the same the same inside jokes with you, if you will, right? You just need people who understand you, right? Human beings are social animals. And when we're removed from that, it just messes up with our psychology. And the other one was really even more intense than around the same concept, but it was really the psychological assault of seeing people who look like me, especially when the cell phone came out, the smartphone came out. We started seeing a drumbeat of young Black males being assassinated at the hands of the police. And, you know, I had developed this stoic mentality that I'm just going to, you know, play my part, do my best, and because I had a family to take care of, and I was going to focus on my career, and I wasn't going to let the outside things kind of impinge on me. And so the drumbeat of seeing young Black men assassinated by police and killed by police and nothing happening was just like, oh my God, this time something's gonna happen, nothing. This time something's gonna happen, nothing. And you know, your heart breaks, but you continue doing what you're doing. But the one that really got me was the Philando Castile killing. And you know, I remember that morning waking up to my, as we wake up in the morning and you look at your mobile phone, you're taking in the news of the world. And I saw this video of a person, his life ebbing away, sitting on the passenger side of a car, and his girlfriend trying to calm the policeman down. And to me, I couldn't, it seemed like a movie. There was just no way this could be real, but it slowly dawned on me that I'm actually watching a real thing. That morning, as I made my way through my morning routine going to work, and I got into the public transport in San Francisco, I was in a daze. I was in a shocked daze. And I was looking at the faces of the people in that bus, trying to find some recognition. Anybody in that bus who was going through the same anguish that I was, so we could just exchange a glance and be like, yeah, you know, it's crazy. But all of them were so nonplussed and so blasé. They were living and I was like, do these people get the same internet that I do? And so I make it to work that day, and we had a sales meeting that morning. And, you know, I was in this stupor. And I was hoping somebody would bring it up. Because I wasn't going to bring it up, because as a Black person, you internalize that your job is not to make white people uncomfortable, especially in a work situation, because you never know where I could go. And so I'm just sitting in this meeting and nobody's talking about it. People are talking about baseball and, you know, the deal they're working on, and minute turns into 10 minutes and turns into the whole meeting is over. And it's like, what world am I in right now? And I remember making my way back to my desk. I was broken. And I realized at that time that, oh my goodness, I'm on my own, for real. And I have to get into this day and perform at the same level as my coworkers. And I had a call 10 minutes after that, and I had to perform. And so for me, that was kind of the backdrop of my life. And so I was at the point, I was at a crossroads. I was looking for my ikigai. I was looking for my TED Talk. This was roiling in my life. And then I made a trip to Kenya around the same time, and I uncovered a problem where there was an entrepreneur who was trying to build a company. He had built a business but couldn't get funding. And I was like, oh my goodness, people keep talking about Africa being the next big thing. But if you cannot enable the best of our entrepreneurs who are working hard, that's what I was used to in the Bay Area. How are we going to do this? How is this going to happen? So I remember flying back home and I was thinking, how do you solve this problem? To me, it was obvious. It's a venture fund, a seed stage venture fund. And I'm like, okay, let me make my way and do that. And started doing the research to actually get into that move. And when I started saying, okay, who's funding and what's happening on the ground here in Nairobi, and I'm in the Bay Area right now doing that research, I'm not ready to make the move at that point, Vala. I'm a person in my 40s. I'm in the process of buying a condo in West Oakland, a place that I've been eyeing for a long time. My kids and I have been going to look at that place as it's being built. I mean, I'm not trying to make any crazy moves. But when I peel the onion and I see who's getting funded, it blows my mind. It looks exactly like Silicon Valley. And all of a sudden, I start talking to entrepreneurs, local entrepreneurs, Black entrepreneurs, and they're like, yeah, there's this whole narrative about how folks had found out that Africa has this social entrepreneurship thing, and a lot of kids had moved over there from the West after university, after college. And all of a sudden, they see opportunities, and to them, it's really obvious because they've been exposed to a very modern economy. They see all these gaps, and they take a run at them, and kudos to them. That's what you should do when you see opportunity, take a run at it. But the reality was, the pattern recognition from the people who are funding, because all the venture money is still from the West, right? Because we don't have that type of experience, expertise, comfortability with that type of asset class. And so they were finding each other. The money was finding people who look like Mark Zuckerberg, right? And they were the ones who were getting permission to build the digital future of Africa. And when I saw that, and when I understood that if you project this 10 years out, what we were walking right into is digital colonization of Africa, I mean, it was over. But it wasn't like I just made the decision. It was still a very excruciating, like, how am I going to do this, right? And so it took me 6 months of mental of research, working my butt off to just validate whether this was the right move to make. And I remember when I spent a month here in February of 2018 to make the decision. And I remember making the decision. And I remember the last time I flew out of SFO. It's a place that the Bay Area is still home to me in some sense, because that's where I became a man. That's where my kids were born. And yeah, I'm still Bay Area, but I'm Africa. And what I learned in the Bay Area, here's what I'm doing. I'm taking the best of what I learned in the Bay Area and inserting it in this place, because the opportunity to shift the narrative is too huge that we can't afford to take any chances and miss out on that. And that's why I made the move.
Ray and I have been doing this show for 4 years. We've interviewed over 630 guests. I don't think at any segment have I been so angry and disappointed in terms of how our society behaves. It's a bittersweet story. Bitter because Silicon Valley lost an incredible bright mind and talent. Sweet because you're creating a movement and your continent and your neighborhoods and your community are going to benefit from it. Thank you for sharing a very vulnerable, very heartfelt. It's not often a guest comes on our show and says I was a broken man. So I appreciate your radical transparency. Ray, go ahead, please.
No, I was going to say it's really important, right? In a lot of areas, back to your point, where talent is evenly distributed, but opportunity isn't. It's also not just the capital, right? That's available. It is the mentorship network. And one of the things that you have done is done a good job of putting together a team and a board, innovation fellows that can connect with other folks that are in the business community. How hard is it to do that? Because you're coming with these wild Silicon Valley, like American ideas, and people are like, no, I don't want to do that, right? I don't want to stick out.
And as you answer that, also tell us how people can support Impact Africa. So how are you doing it, and how can we help?
Yeah, and I think it's important because that network, right? You want to make sure founders have mentors. You want to make sure that the money knows that there's businesses on the other end to actually build out the rest of the business and the business model and the monetization models that are out there. So yes, share a little bit about that story, and of course what Vala said. How can people help?
Yeah. So how do we do it? So if you think about the problems that we face over here are quite different, similar and quite different than in the Bay Area. So what we need to do is we need to be able to develop people and build capacity while we're also developing innovation and building startups. And so what we have created is a 3-pillar strategy, which is around developing innovation leaders. And what does that actually mean, right? what that means is we need to shift mindsets while at the same time imparting skill sets. The best way I can describe this is if you think about the average kid coming out of Stanford, their mindset that they've been inserted into them is go change the world. If you think about the average person coming out of university here, they're just hoping to get a job. But at the same time, everybody's talking about become an innovator, become an entrepreneur. You haven't prepared me for this. I'm not ready for this world. And so what I realize is, you know what? We need to work with the raw talent that still has the opportunity to actually learn and grow and change, and quickly insert in them that mindset that the world is a malleable place. And how do you do that? You involve them in the process of creating things that matter. So every single thing you will see about Impact Africa is developed with our innovation fellows. What we do is we provide them, we provide college grads with a 12-month innovation fellowship. And it works like an internship, but it's really a rapid learning environment where we're actually working on real scalable opportunities. We are bold in terms of what we believe we can do, because if they can do it in Y Combinator, genius is even distributed. Let's go for it. And from what I learned in the Bay Area, it's this rigorous, systematic way in terms of how you interrogate ideas and how you move them into the market. That was fun. To me, that is just like a huge deal.
You reminded me of something. You reminded me of something that's really important, and I think people do forget that. In the Valley, it's a culture of abundance. Everywhere else, it's a culture of scarcity. And to get into the mindset of the culture of abundance, really, you have to break out your imagination. I mean, I had an opportunity to join a links company in the early 90s that Stanford kids kind of put together. And, I asked them, how much was the pay? And they said, it's $40,000. I was making $100,000 in a consulting firm. Like, no, you should come, right? And I'm like, how could I explain this to my mom? Like, I'm going to take a $40,000 job at this company called Yahoo? Like, who would do that? So you don't know that. I don't have any other people that tell me that's okay. I came from the East Coast. Everything is structured. Listen, you go to this internship.
As a first-gen immigrant, I had the same mentality. Absolutely. Get a job. My parents, get a job. It wasn't about...
Get a job at a known company. A known company.
Yes.
Known company.
Yes.
So
someone that your mom can tell another mom that your other auntie's going to be proud of you.
So the challenge we have is that, but it's also it's multiplied because there are not that many opportunities, right? And so essentially what we need to do is we need to develop people at a rapid pace, but we also need to put product into the market that actually gets traction. We need to do two things at the same time. And people ask me all the time, like, the first thing people hear, startup studio, why are you guys a nonprofit? Because the work we're doing at this stage, at this level of capacity building, the 0 to 1 work, doesn't work for venture. Venture is looking for growth. Venture is looking for a clear, we have to build people. We have to get Vala to come and do a fireside chat with our people to shift their mindset. The VC is going to say, like, why are we doing this? Let's go to work. So that's like, and the third thing that we do, so we develop innovation leaders, we launch startups, and we build community. Because the community is what's going to actually enable number 1 and number 2 to happen. So when Vala comes and does a fireside chat, when Jeff Wiener at LinkedIn comes and does a fireside chat, he shifts the mindset. And when they can fund us, provide us the capital to actually do the work that we need to do at the pace that we need to do it, so that we can create those fundable startups, those fundable ideas. And, you have to work with the conditions you have on the ground and the reality on the ground and the culture you have on the ground and the opportunity that you have on the ground. You have to put the menu together that works for you. So to answer your question, was it hard? It was not easy. It was mostly mental than anything else, because I understand the culture. And I iterated a couple of things. At first, I thought it was going to be a venture fund, but I realized, oh my goodness, a lot of the entrepreneurs here are not ready to, they don't understand that move, that you're going to invest money in me, are you going to take over my company, blah, blah, blah. It's not a thing that's been done before. And the other thing too, it's like, so I realized that we need to do something different. So what we do, let me just kind of summarize this for you and how people can support. What we do is really flip the model on, if you look at a big tech company like Salesforce or Google or any of those guys, they build one product and then they build a startup studio. Then they go and build other products or do acquisition, and they build that. We flip the model. We want to actually build from the bottom up, and we're taking a run at different ideas, but we have to fund it in some way. Those big companies fund it with their revenue. but they bring talent in to build the next product or that type of stuff. We don't have that yet, so we can't wait to get that company that will do that. We just need to build capacity, take a run at ideas, and try and make it happen. So
you're the other side of the two-sided network. You're the other side of the two-sided network. You're the supply side trying to actually match their demand, right? And instead of doing it with the money, you're doing it with the ideas, the blood, the sweat, the guts, right? All the emotion behind creating a startup. And once you create that network, I mean, that's the other side of the network. That's what makes this really exciting.
Right. And so the way people can support this, we have a couple of ways that we've identified. There's one called the micro donation program. And this is where anybody in the world can support us for like as little as $30 a month, right? And recently, Jeff Weiner, we actually have a campaign running right now, executive chairman at LinkedIn, saw my article, he put that out there and we're like, oh my God, this is our opportunity. So we jumped on that and I kind of wrote a follow-up to that article. And for the first time, we saw growth in our micro donations thing. We're in Africa. Nobody knows who we are. I mean, but for $30 a month, people saw that story and they were like, oh my goodness, this is great. And so we saw growth in that. What was exciting was what has emerged out of that is the mentor network of people with domain expertise who can dive in and help us work on projects and de-risk a lot of things for us, impart that knowledge in that rapid pace. That mentor network is invaluable. So for $30 a month, you can join our micro donations program. You can go to impactafrica.network/support. It's on the screen over there. And join this movement. It works just like Netflix. It's a subscription program for $30 a month, allows us to continue doing this work. Now, if the other thing that we look for is individuals who have built companies, individuals who have leadership experience, who can come and also provide us that mindset shift, that thing. But they can also write bigger checks. And so we have a fundraising campaign called the 100 Founders Challenge. And this is really built around individuals like Stuart Butterfield at Slack and Aaron Levy and people of that nature who can write a 4, 5, 6-figure check, but they can also bring that belief, that credibility, that know-how, those connections, other resources. So the Founders Challenge is a great way for successful entrepreneurs and business leaders who can do more, to give more, and can be part of our fireside chat conversation. My dream is to have people like Mark Benioff come and speak to our people, because that changes people immediately. The mind cannot go back. And once it's stretched, like this guy is talking to, like, who? This is unbelievable. We just had Craig Newmark of Craigslist last week. And we think
Mark watches the show, so we hope he hears your message here. But thank you so much for being on the show. We're so sorry we're out of time, but we're here with Mark Karake, founder and CEO of Impact Africa. And you can follow him on Twitter at Karake, Mark. And of course, check out the ability to actually donate and watch him activate movements across Africa. Thanks a lot for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Mark, you're amazing. Thank you so much for an amazing story. Ray, we got to do our show at night. It seems like if you're joining us at 10 at night, or Dr. G and I are on the same time zone. So
it's so glad with replays. We'd be dead without this thing.
What an honor. This is our cleanup hitter spot where we bring like an awesome person to hit a grand slam. And it's an honor and a privilege for us to have Dr. Geeta Nayyar, Executive Medical Director at Salesforce, as our final guest. Dr. G, we're friends, so I get a chance to call Dr. Nayyar Dr. G. Dr. G is a nationally recognized leader in healthcare, information technology, physician executive, a frequent sought-after public speaker, and an author with unique perspective that bridges clinical medicine, business, communication, and digital health. Dr. G currently serves as Executive Medical Director for Salesforce, connecting the North American enterprise health systems to the technologies that empower hospitals, enhance the work of physicians, and improve patient care. Previously, Dr. G served as Chief Medical Officer for Greenway Health, Chief Medical Information Officer at AT&T and Fenwell Group Health. So incredible business acumen, a healthcare practitioner. She's one of the smartest people at Salesforce. Follow Dr. G, Dr. Nayyar on Twitter at GNayyar, GNayyar. Welcome, Dr. G, to DisrupTV.
Thank you so much, Vala and Ray. I have to kick it off with a rumor that I heard. I heard that your show was awesome And that guy, Mark, oh my God, super inspiring. Both amazing guests. Very humbled to be following both of them. Just wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.
That was positive gossip, in case you didn't catch it.
Positive gossip. See, I told you, Ray. Dr. G, super smart.
But I expected more from you, Ray.
That's awesome. Well, hey, look, you've been on national TV talking about COVID-19 before you were at Salesforce. People have been watching segments from you about this all over the country. I mean, where are we? Right, we're 6 months in, right? And how does healthcare change? Like, what are some of the big pieces that you thought this would never happen, and then suddenly it occurred because of where we are with COVID-19?
Sure. So, I think that there's so many things that have happened, right? You guys told me I have like 10 minutes. I don't know if we can cover it all.
No, we go beyond. Please.
I'm gonna do my best. No, but
you get a little bit more than that.
Yeah. It's 15. But the reality is that we've realized how fragile our healthcare system is, and we've realized how fragile our individual health is, right? So what you're seeing now is people are not going to the emergency room, right? Surprise, surprise, all the things we thought were emergencies are now, it's like, gosh, should I go online? Should I find Dr. G? Should I find someone else to help me out with this before running to the ER, right? By the way, not something new in healthcare. We're all appreciating it now in this pandemic, but having been on call in the ER when it's snowing, when there's a hurricane, guess what? Nobody comes to the ER when there's a crisis in America unless they really need the ER, right? Unless you're really having a heart attack, really having a stroke, you're home, right? You're like, man, I should pick up my medication, and man, I really should listen to my doctor. Let me make that appointment. So this is not new, but it is really refreshing in some ways to see that people are saying, how do I get healthcare in my home or in the office, which is probably the right place and the right cost point for it, right? And actually do better, right? And actually do better because now it's more accessible. So what we're seeing is all of that. And obviously the consumer now is saying, gosh, my health is important. So I'm going to dial into it, right? I'm going to find out who's my doctor. I'm going to make sure I have health insurance or figure out what that looks like for me and my family. And hey, if CVS has the flu shot, I'm going to go there because it's easier than getting an appointment with me, frankly, at this point, with everything that's going on. So all of that's happening, which we've been wanting to happen in healthcare, it just happened like this because of the pandemic. So
sure.
I'm making time. I'm making good time.
Yeah. So I have two questions. The first one is, Salesforce is awesome, but you were kind of a superstar. You're kind of a pretty awesome, accomplished healthcare expert, CMIO at AT&T. How did you choose to join Salesforce? What motivated you to join Salesforce? And then follow-up question is, following up Ray's question, long-term impact of COVID. We'd love to have your expert point of view in terms of what does this mean for us as we end 2020 and go into 2021 and beyond?
Sure. So I really appreciate the question. Thank you, Vala. That's, very humbling. So I've been watching DisrupTV and following Vala long before Vala knew who I was. So he is my big brother, whether he likes it or not. I'm going to hold him to that. So, it's an inspiring place when you see people like Vala, yourself, Ray, Mark Benioff. I mean, a company that actually, has a mission, which is not just to build a business, but also has a role in the community, right? I'm a physician, I'm a doc. I'm all about, purpose, passion. And I personally believe that empowering people to be healthy is critical to life because without health, you have nothing else, right? And we're seeing that more than ever today. As far as where, and I'm representative also of one of a much bigger team. So we have about 20 clinicians at Salesforce. I'm not the only doc, I'm not the only nurse, and I certainly hope I'm also not the last. We have so much work to do. I think we've learned that in this pandemic. And we've also learned that there is such a big space for digital engagement. So that brings me to your second question, which is where is healthcare going? Healthcare has been struggling in North America for a very long time, specifically in the US, right? We've all appreciated how fragile it is, and so many health systems were just not set up for success. Our entire system was not set up for this kind of crisis. Unfortunately, it won't be our last one. So this is our opportunity to sort of, get it together. Nijam just put out an article this July that basically said, look, this is not 1918 healthcare leader. You have an opportunity that did not exist in 1918. It is called technology.
God.
Yeah, right.
the clipboard's not enough.
Oh, right, exactly. And we've got a lot to learn. So we're learning that there are things we can do in the home, remote patient monitoring, telemedicine, but there's also a lot that we're figuring out, right? So fraud, waste, and abuse, still a huge issue in healthcare. We're going to have to figure that out on this journey. We also have to figure out how to keep humanity in healthcare, right? The worst thing I could do to a patient, guys, is this, right? So I think we have this really terrible chronic autoimmune disease called lupus. And it may or may not affect every organ system in your body. You got that? Right? We gotta look people in the eye. We gotta keep the humanity.
The new digital bedside manner. You gotta get, everyone's got to have a rotating fan.
Dr. G also recently wrote an article that said healthcare companies need to be digital. And in that, it was about humanizing. It was about connecting on different channels. It was about becoming more empathetic and accessible. So you're absolutely right in terms of this impact will hopefully accelerate the healthcare industry's sense of urgency in terms of really caring more about the patient experience.
So we got a massive distortion, right? I have a public health background. We got a massive distortion in cases, right? So the COVID cases.
So I'm like a big fan of Ray already. He picked the right doctor, not just the right woman, but the right doctor.
Can't complain at all. So you look at COVID-19 cases are super high, right? I mean, if you look in an average year, 680,000 heart attacks, right? And we got COVID coming up, about 200,000, and then a whole bunch of things disappeared. Right. I mean, and so people are like, oh, okay, did those chronic diseases go away? Are other folks coming back in? Do we worsen the situation because they couldn't access to get to healthcare? Like, are we in the middle of a healthcare crisis and we don't know it? Or are these things just going to just taper off and we'll be okay? Like, what's your opinion on that?
So, we've been in a crisis, right? Like if you talk to any frontline worker, we've been in a healthcare crisis. The day when you walk into the emergency room, any emergency room in this country, any given day, pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, post, it's a war, right? There's a reason we talk about front lines and backlines. We use the language of war in our profession. I mean, that's not new. And it's because it feels like a war, right? And we are fighting disease every day. And unfortunately, I wish lupus went away. I wish asthma went away, diabetes, forget that. We've got COVID now. It doesn't work like that, right? Ray, you know this. Your wife probably complains a lot about this, right? And it actually is very hard to manage a patient with lupus, COVID-19, and diabetes. It's that much harder. And that's why
My sister-in-law is in room and she's telling it's like so hard because you can't see them. You can't have the engagement. You can't really assess how they're doing on their H&P. There's not there. So
it's hard. And we got to look at the hands. So now I'm like asking patients, so does that feel warm? On a scale of 1 to 10, what's that one? Is that a 10? Is that an 8? Before I just feel your hands and it's like, okay, I know this is RA. I know this is active. Boom, bada bing. Let's talk about treatment, which is where I want to go as the doc, right? So these things are taking longer because we're having to get creative. And guys, not everyone's that creative, right? None of us as physicians were trained to do a lot of this. And none of our systems were created like this. And that's where this digital engagement piece comes in. Because the number one thing that patients will always say to me, doesn't matter what disease, doesn't matter what age, what gender, what ethnic background, doc, how do I call you? How do I get in touch with you? When I have a question, when all my anxiety, leaves me when I leave your office, and then I got 10 questions I didn't ask you, how do I get to ask you? And so that's the digital engagement piece, right? Because maybe it's not me that has to answer the phone, but it's leveraging, I say it's digital extenders. We have physician extenders, we have nurses, we have PAs, we have people who help the physician do their job. Digital extenders need to help us too. So when I know that you didn't pick up your medication or you do have a question, why can't you text me? And why can't that be a good experience? Because let me tell you, in healthcare, the number one reason patients come back to you is because of how you make them feel, right? That's not a new adage. I want to pretend.
No, it is. My wife's panel is totally full. I mean, and they're like, hey, I need my Rituxan and Humira, like my Humira prescription.
So
that's why they're texting you.
In this spirit of physician extender topic, especially in big business, do big companies need to have a chief medical officer or a chief health officer on their executive leadership team? Because it seems like you wrote every healthcare company needs to become digital, but it seems like every digital company needs to think about health and safety of their stakeholders, employees, customers, partners, communities. What are your thoughts about, and I know our company has a chief medical officer, chief health officer. So what are your thoughts about companies really thinking about having health as a top priority?
Sure. So I think we're seeing that, right? And I'm going to answer this actually in Mark's words, right? So he says, trust is now the currency of business. So it comes down to trust. If your employees cannot feel safe doing their job, they're not going to work at your company anymore, right? And if your customers can't feel safe getting your service or your product, they're not going to use it anymore. And they're going to find someone else that they trust. And, you know, whether it's the chief medical officer, chief health officer, listen, I don't think it's about titles. I think it's about purpose of the role. And absolutely someone in charge of employee health and well-being has to be at the table. Because when we look at the cost of healthcare, the productivity losses, they existed long before COVID. And now with folks working from home, many moms, especially a lot of women in business, women in medicine, are really struggling with that, right? My 8-year-old is going to visit us at any moment. I'm giving
I hope so. I hope so.
I was like,
Live cameo appearance.
That'll be fine.
Future Dr. G. Future Dr. G. So one other question I have is, okay, you mentioned your daughter. We have fathers and mothers watching the show. We're all parents here. Any advice you can give to parents? My son started his school, first day of school yesterday. I got to tell you, there was a little bit of anxiety, all of us, including myself, just having him go to school. They did a beautiful job, but any advice you have in terms of flu shots, school, where people can get some insights in terms of calming their anxiety and stress when they're thinking about their children going back to school?
Sure. So I think, like the conversations we've been having, safety first, not just in the workplace, but also in the home. So I think if you're assessing your back to school situation, number one, talk to your doctor for your children, talk to your pediatrician, right? Unfortunately, the way things are happening, there's so much misinformation out there. It's hard to really make that decision right now as an individual family. And every family is different, right? Some kids have asthma, some have diabetes, some have family members who have chronic conditions or autoimmune diseases, and they have to not just make a decision for them, but who they might expose. So I would, number one, say, talk to your own doctor, assess your own health situation at home. Insurance is important. Listen, COVID-19 is a detrimental, serious disease. If something happens, make sure that you have coverage, you can handle it financially. Also figure out the logistics. If someone gets sick, how are you going to quarantine, especially if it's a child? Usually one parent, of course, has to take care of that child. So all of these things have to be kind of measured, and then you make your decision. There's always risk in life and in the world, but I like to think that we have different measures, and you as a family have to make that decision. And absolutely get the flu shot. If you didn't do it before, please get it. If you have an allergy to eggs, don't get it. Talk to your doctor. But, it's
yes. If you do have an allergy to eggs, do not get that.
Yes. There are alternatives, but again, please talk to your doctor. And this is the time. September, we just got ours. And then give your kids ice cream. I think be gentle on your kids too. Realize they're going through a lot. My daughter kind of just had a fit today and threw her computer. She's like, I got 100, I'm done with her spelling test. I'm like,
nice.
School is not over. School is not over. And her dad's like, why are you giving her a hard time? I'm like, she just walked out of the program. You can't do that.
That's awesome.
Pick your battles. I think we all pick our battles.
Sage advice. That's awesome.
So, hey, I'm going to ask you a question that a lot of people ask, and kind of like people would ask you on your normal TV show. So where are we on the vaccine, right? We've got vaccines and we got therapeutics. Explain the difference to folks, why, what one does and what the other part does. And are we getting close?
Sure. So one of the good things that have come out of the pandemic, I know we don't hear a lot about that, but there are some good things. And one is this, how do we prevent, right? I think we've established that we don't want to get COVID-19, anyone, if you can prevent it, right? And if you had it before, you don't want to get it again. So that's the importance of a vaccine. And we have tremendous vaccines historically, polio, rubella, the flu, right? The reason we don't talk about these diseases is because vaccines have helped us prevent them. So the key here is, can we get a vaccine for COVID-19, and can we do it safely? And then can we get it to enough people so that we can all get off Zoom and have a party at your house, right?
Hey,
so,
I want to go to Vala's house for a party.
So that's a vaccine. Right? Therapeutics are therapy, treatment, right? So if you do unfortunately get COVID-19, how do you treat it, right? Like any other disease, if you get pneumonia, if it's bacterial, we give you antibiotics, and then how do you bounce back? Sooner is better than 2 weeks at home, is better than 3 weeks in the hospital. So how do we treat you and get you home? And we have some therapeutics for COVID-19. Again, a lot we're learning about in both the vaccine and the therapies that are some helpful and some not. And like with everything I just said, measured risk. With the vaccine, with the therapeutics, as we're rolling this out and learning about this as a medical community, we're measuring, and we just saw with AstraZeneca that they have already found in their data that the risk was too high and they had to pull and kind of pause their vaccine study, right? But there are many studies out there. This is not new in the medical community, but we're just all our ears are perked up, and as they should be. So we want to make sure it's safe. The medical community needs to do their job.
But there's a big change, though. But there's a big change in the clinical trial process, right? In the past, we waited for the end of each trial to begin the next. Yeah. Here, the government has actually made purchases to actually facilitate the ability to run parallel work streams, which is very different, right?
It is very different. I think in the end, we've got to really keep an eye towards the science, right? On this one, you got to listen to the medical community. It doesn't matter what your political affiliation is. Dr. Fauci's king. He's king until there's no other king. I trained under him, so I feel like I can say that.
Oh, awesome. Wow,
and the data will speak for itself. So Ray, you're right. And I think that we can't hide it. I mean, we're seeing that, right? So my hope is that we do the right thing. Again, trust is important. It's unfortunate that many folks have been wary of vaccines long before COVID. And now with so much misinformation and miscommunication, it's happening again. The scientific community needs to keep everyone honest. The drug manufacturers need to do the same. I think we saw that also this week. So we've got
the pledge they made it early in the week. Yep.
That's right. And you can't skip. Here's the thing. Shocker. You can't go from mice to humans. Yeah. It's not going to work out. So I think the medical community knows this. And I really hope that we can convey that to the lay community. But number one person you're going to make this decision with over COVID-19 and whether you should get that vaccine, whatever it looks like, is your doctor. Everyone has an individual situation. And whatever the vaccine turns out to be, there's going to be some effect, some side effect, some caveat, some age group, as with any medication. So you want to make sure you have a primary care physician, a pediatrician, if you have children. Make the decision with your doctor, just like you do for any health decision in your family. Do not make it with CNN or Fox. Don't make it on DisrupTV, as much as I love it. Make it with your own physician who knows.
I thought there was an online AI tool that I could just analyze my symptoms. Yeah. I mean, come on, what are you talking about?
There isn't an app for that? There isn't an app for that?
Yeah, well, that's the app. Can you turn that fan speed higher?
I want your doctor to tell you, not my fan.
Dr.
Speak
G,
to the fan. Speak to the fan.
You crushed it on this segment. God, so much great sage advice. Thank you so much.
We are here with Dr. Geeta Nayyar, Executive Medical Director at Salesforce. You can figure out and track her on Twitter and get all interesting advice. GNAYYAR. And of course, catch her on her videos. You can see a lot of great videos of her in the past with some great medical advice as well. So, hey, thanks a lot for being on the show. And, thanks a lot for the great advice. Very timely.
Terrific advice. Thank you so much.
Talk to you on Monday.
You got it. Thank you. Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Thanks. Wow, Ray. An incredible guest from India, an incredible guest from Africa, an incredible guest from the US. And all of them just expanded my brain. As Deepali mentioned, infinite learning. I learned so much from her. Mark's story was just tugged at my heart, but I know he's going to put a dent in the universe in a part of a world where we need more people like Mark. And Dr. G is just like, she's like a rock
Mark's got a good point. Like, people are going to be talking about Marks in Africa, and they're going to be talking about that Mark.
That Mark! And we're gonna say he was on our show in 2020. Exactly. Mark, I'm gonna, no pun intended, mark my calendar when the third Mark Karake was on our show. So anyway, we've gone a little bit over our time, but I just want to mention that next week we have Carl Golden, founder and CEO at Hint. I've got Hint water bottles all throughout my house.
I've got Hint water bottles everywhere. But hey, breaking news.
Yes.
Our second guest is actually Brian Fanzo. He's actually going to be
all right. Awesome. Talk about a digital disruptor. That's awesome. And then we have Sina Naral, author and director of MIT's initiative on digital economy. So, we're going to have an incredible conversation there. So, if it's Friday, it's DisrupTV. This show was this was episode 205. We have interviewed 628 guests in the last 4 years and change. And this show was just incredible. So thank you, Deepali, Mark, and Dr. G. You guys were incredible. Ray, closing remarks. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Just watch our Twitter feed. Watch our Twitter feed and watch for the cool stuff that's going on at CCE 2020. This is unlike any virtual event you'll ever experience, and I will promise you that. So see you guys around.
Can't
Bye.
wait. Bye.